Prologue. Spain, July 1970. She had caught the young woman's eye the day before, by the swimming pool. The little boy was in a foul mood, still unsteady on his feet and determined to defy his mother. But it didn't matter. She had already decided. He was the one. His mother's smile was strained.
"He's hungry. He's always bad-tempered when he's hungry. His brother's just the same. We can all be a bit grumpy when we need to eat."
It was almost a defense, as if she was empathizing with him already. His mother would remember the conversation for the rest of her life, and always wonder. It was midday then, and across a sun-burnished bay the jumble of white, red-roofed buildings that clustered around the church was reflected in deepest turquoise. Now, just 2 hours after sunset, it was moonlight that spilled across its mirrored surface, seen in a backward glance from where the dark hills folded one upon the other before the Mediterranean disappeared from view. Yesterday's calm anticipation had been replaced by fear verging on panic. The blood, sticky and dark, was everywhere. On her hands, on the steering wheel, a careless moment, the razor-sharp edge of a freshly cut fingernail. A sleepy hand that grazed her cheek as it reached out to grasp her neck. From the darkened terrace, she had seen his parents in the light of the restaurant on the far side of the pool, wine and laughter. Her whispered words of reassurance to the boy were superfluous. He was asleep already, his bloody panda left lying on the bedroom floor where it had fallen. The road wound down in hairpin turns into the dark of the pine forest, gnarled roots searching among the stones of ancient terraces for a hold on the world, their parasol canopies like clouds shading them from a startling moon. With the lights of Llança receding in her rear-view mirror, the route north made its tortuous way around successive headlands, affording only occasional glimpses of the sea. Then, below, the floodlit railway junction at Portbou, massive lifting gear straddling a confluence of tracks. A change of gauge before crossing an invisible line beyond which everything would change. Language, culture, the future, the past. The French frontier stood at the end of a long climb out of the town. It was the moment she had feared most. There was no one on the Spanish side. A light burned in the customs post, but there was no sign of life. The barrier was down at the French douane. A sleepy immigration officer looked up from his desk behind sliding glass as she drew to a halt. She fumbled for her passport with bloody fingers. What would she tell him? If she showed him her card, then he would remember her for sure when the alarm was raised, but he didn't even look. He lifted the barrier and waved her through. He would never see the blood, or her card, or register her face, or see the baby boy asleep in a cot on the back seat. She was through. It was done. Only the future lay ahead. 90 minutes later, she drove past the entrance to the commando training fort on the hill, a narrow road beneath twisting vines in brilliant flower, mired still in the shadow of night, and parked her car next to the little stone cottage that sat on the edge of the cliffs. She was home, and with child, and would spend the next 16 years raising a killer.
Simon Vance. So let me tell you a little bit about the background to Blacklight Blue. This was a slight departure from me because I, for the first time, developed a backstory that I actually used. I mean, for all cold case stories, you always have to develop a backstory because you need to know what the crime was that the investigator is going back to sort out. In this particular case, I developed a backstory that became so interesting it had to become an integral part of the telling of the tale, and so the book kind of moves backwards and forwards in time, and I think I've done it fairly seamlessly. Everybody who's read it seems to feel that it works well, and I'm certainly very happy with it. Some of those images you saw in behind the reading of the prologue were images I took while doing research for the book. And it's one of the joys of writing, really, that well, for me anyway, one of the most important and pleasurable aspects of it is doing the research. And for these particular books, getting to go to interesting places. Obviously, for the China series, I got to go to China a lot. For the Enzo Files, I get to see parts of France I might never otherwise have seen. And in fact, this one took me down into Spain as well, Cadaqués in the north of Spain. Later, I'll show you some clips from my research trips, some interesting places, Cadaqués, Collioure, down on the French Mediterranean coast near the Spanish border, Aubagne in Provence, which is the headquarters of the Foreign Legion, Strasbourg, the home of the European Parliament, and a place called Le Liron, which is about 2 hours away from where I live here in France, up in the mountains, ski resort, an interesting location that I used for the set piece denouement of the whole book. They have a wonderful cable car up there that takes you up to the top of the highest mountain in that area, called the Plomb du Cantal, and it's pretty spectacular. Of course, I was up there in the summer. The book is set in November, and there is snow around at that time, so quite different, but you'll see that when I come to show the video. The book itself was interesting because the story came out of the idea that here is Enzo involved in attempting to solve these French cold cases using new forensic science to go back over old evidence. And he's been pretty successful to date. And you've got to imagine that if you're one of the killers involved in those cold cases and you see somebody working his way through those cases successfully, with the likelihood that one of these days he's going to get to you and he's going to catch you, what are you going to do about that? Well, the chances are you're going to try and stop him getting there. So that's really what Blacklight Blue is all about. Somebody is out to get Enzo. They are deconstructing his life, in fact. He doesn't know who it is, he doesn't know which case it is involved with, so he has to resolve all these issues, find out who it is, which case, and then solve the case in order to find the person who's trying to deconstruct his life, in fact, murder him. So it's an interesting tale. I enjoyed it very much, and as usual, of course, during the development of the book, there was a peculiar thing happened. You know, those of you who know me will know that you know, almost everything I write in fiction is mirrored in some way in life, that what I write comes to pass. And sometimes that's very unsettling. I mean, that's something that's dogged me all through my television writing years, all through the books, Snakehead, the wagon full of dead Chinese. I mean, there are so many different things that have happened. In this particular book, I was developing the storyline, and it, as you've heard from the prologue, it begins with a young child being snatched from a holiday hotel in Spain, and almost simultaneous with my development of this story was the terrible case in Portugal of young Madeline being taken from her parents' hotel room while they were dining. Now, it's coincidence, of course, but it's unsettling. I always find these things unsettling. And I'm sure it's not the first, and it won't be the last thing to occur. I don't know whether I'm plugged into the cosmos in some way, I don't know. But I hope and pray that Madeline will be found in the end. The child in my book survived. You'll find out how and why when you read it. But now I'll show you some of those clips of video that I took from my research while I was developing the book. It's an interesting journey, always is. Here we are.